It is now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this morning, Jani McGuire. Jani McGuire is a certified professional coach, and she has a list of many talents. And I'm sure many of you, like myself, know all those talents that she has because Jani and her husband Dave have been associated with this center for the last 20 years. In fact, Jani and Dave were co-directors of our youth program for 3 years. And Jani is the founder of an organization called Awakening Young Minds. And she actually took some of her students with Reverend Dr. Keith Cox to Malawi, Africa, to build a school with those students. Amazing, amazing activity that she did. Jani is an author. She's an actress. She's a speaker. She's an intuitive medium. And to many of us here, she's a friend. And so please join with me in giving a very loving welcome to Jani McGuire.
Why wait for your awakening? Do you value your reasons for staying small more than the light shining through the open door? Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Now is the only time you have to be whole. Now. Now is the sole moment that exists to live in the light of your true nature. Perfection is not a prerequisite for anything but peace. Perfection is not a prerequisite for anything but peace. Please, oh please, don't continue to believe in your stories of deficiency and failure. This is the day of your awakening. Good morning. Back here, up here, in a time of great transformation for the center. I have been here long enough to see many transformations, many transformations, and knowing that it is all good. And that, as my mom always says, it always works out. And it always does. You're not dead yet. It'll work out. Don't worry about it. And be patient. So I began my first transformation, my first real deep awakening when I was about 30 years old. And I said yes to a workshop that my husband had participated in, and I saw a transformation in him, so I said yes. And I went in there. And at that time, if you would have asked me how my life was, I would have said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 9.5. Fantastic. Happily married, successful actress. Our daughter was 5 years old at the time. Life was good. But what I didn't know was that scale was so much bigger than 10. I had no idea how much more it could go. I walked into that workshop in a cocoon of my own small thinking, and I emerged the butterfly, comfortable in my own skin for the very first time in my life, and free. And I was transformed forever. Now that was a really great thing, but the truth is, if you've had a big transformation in your life, sometimes you wish you could go back. You ever had that? You wish I was naive again, because it was a little easier then. Now I know so much that I'm fully responsible for my life. Have you guys experienced that? I wish I could go back, but I didn't know. But that was a huge transformation. I really thought I was okay. Things were really great. But I didn't realize that I was living in mediocrity. I didn't realize that I was living in not enough. I didn't realize that I was living in so much fear. I just didn't know. I didn't know that I didn't know that. I knew certain things in my life, I knew, but I didn't know until I went in and I took on myself. It really wasn't the workshop that did it. It was me saying, a work. My spiritual teacher used to always say to me, Jani, just do the work. That's what you do. Jani, what do you do? He said, do your work. Do your work. Only you know what your work is. I don't know what your work is. You know what your work is. Transformation is not a destination. Transformation is not a destination. It's not a place to get to. Life is transformation. Transformation happens all the time. We're always changing every single day. Some types of transformation I like to call spontaneous transformation, like spontaneous combustion. It happens to you, and it happens without you expecting it. A death, a diagnosis, a divorce. And you can't help but transform. You can't help but have something happen within us that shifts us and changes us forever. Or there's a conscious transformation where we seek transformation, where we come to a place like this, where we read a book, where we take on a workshop, and we say yes to the work. And we're consciously choosing to transform our lives. But how many of you still feel that you've done all this, and you've done the work, and you're in the process of doing the work, but you still feel stuck? How many of you still feel stuck?
Why is it that I'm doing all this yet I still feel stuck? It's because you're still in your little comfort zone, or as I'll refer it today, your cocoon, our comfortable place, our cocoon, where we stay there in that space, in that little circle. And we've done our work in that little circle, and we keep going around and around in that little circle of the comfort zone, around and around, and saying, okay, I did it, I did my work. Sometimes the comfort zone expands, and we've stepped out a little bit, and we've done a little more work, but we stay within that comfort zone, because that's what we know. But today I want to talk to you about the die zone. You ever heard of the die zone? Way, way, way outside of the comfort zone. So you think about the comfort zone as a target. The die zone is the biggest, widest part of the target. And the die zone is that place that you say to yourself, no way am I going to get up on that stage and talk in front of a bunch of people. I would rather die. There is no way that I am going to do that because I would rather die. There's no way I'm going to tell her that because I would rather die. There's no way I'm going to confront that person on that because I would rather die. There's no way I'm going to speak my truth because I would rather die than be vulnerable. I would rather die than be that vulnerable and let people really see me. We tell ourselves that. I would rather die. And the other part of the die zone is that part of you that you need to let die in order to fully live. That part of you that you've been carrying around with you for years, that part, that story that you tell yourself that you created when you were little, that story that you continue to tell yourself is, I'm not enough, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I'm not smart enough, I'm not brave enough, I'm too old. And that part needs to be let go and needs to die off so we can fully live. And to grieve that is to fully go into a transformation and a catharsis of awakening, of a death, of letting something die. Because that thing that we have carried with us all these years, that belief system, the BS that you're carrying with you, that needs to die for you in order for you to grow. Some of us have so much stuff, so much BS, so much story in us that you're up to here, and some of you can't even speak your truth because it's so filled. How many of you feel like that? Some of you feel like you're choked sometimes. You can't even talk. You can't even speak your truth. You can't even get it out because there's so much in there. Well, in order to fully let the new in, you've got to have that cathartic release of that death, letting something die off for the new to come in. The new has no space to come in when everything is filled up. So that's all great, but how do you do that? Where's the work? The work is in every day waking up in the morning And I hope meditating, yes, in that quiet, 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, that's all you need. I remember Dr. Seuss said years ago, we were doing a class and we asked about meditation, and you said something that was so profound to me, because you said you've been meditating for years, and still when you sit to meditate, the voice says, okay, what am I going to do today? Okay, I have to do this, I'm going to go to the grocery store, I'm going to and that dress in the window was awfully cute yesterday. You know, and the mind just wandered off, and that it was okay. So sitting in the meditation and getting yourself ready for your day, and going about your day and knowing that everything that's going to be put in front of you, everything that's going to be presented in front of you is for your transformation. That boss that's bothering you, the spouse that's, you know, pushing your buttons that you installed, by the way. Just remember, nobody can push your buttons. It's not about them. And for you to notice, just notice all those people that are pleasantly being put in front of you, saying, here, one more. Spirit is speaking to you every day. Here's one more. Take a look, take a look. What is coming up for you? And when you then can become the observer and step outside of yourself and say, what is that about? Why am I so bothered with that? Why am I so reactive to that person? Who is that, mom or dad? Bottom line, who does that person represent, mom or dad? And look and ask yourself the question over and over, why am I feeling that way? It's not about them. And when you can ask yourself and you can step out and observe and watch yourself, say, okay, let me take responsibility. Let me take a look at that. Why am I saying that? What is that conversation? And why am I so defensive? What am I so afraid of really looking at? So when I do the work with kids and with women, it is all about transformation. I create a safe space that allows transformation to happen. I don't push anybody into transformation. I open up the space, open up my heart, and do things that create processes that create transformation, if the person's ready. And when they're ready, it's a miraculous thing to witness. So I would work with youth in downtown LA and some pretty scary areas sometimes. And I remember one time we were doing a process of some cathartic release work and letting go of anger. And, you know, a lot of times the kids let it out and they cry. And there was this guy just was holding tight. You could just see it in his fists, and his whole body was just holding tight. And after it, he came up to me and he was really big. And he looked down on me and he says, "Ma'am, don't you know gangsters don't cry?" And I said, "Oh, well, do you have a heart?" "Yes." "Do you have feelings?" "Sometimes." So as the workshop went on, he began to open up a little more and a little more. And by the end of it, we sat down and he began to talk, and he told me his life story about how when he was a little boy, he was a sensitive, sweet little boy growing up in a tough neighborhood. And he was a mama's boy, and his mom would make him a lunchbox every day, and the kids teased him about it. And he would go home and he'd cry, and he'd say, "Mom, you know, they're teasing me about it." And she'd say, "Oh, it's okay, mijo, you go back, and you just tell them to leave you alone." And it would go on, and pretty soon they started kind of beating him up a little bit. So he went to his dad, and he said, "Dad, you know, they're beating me up." And he says, "You know, fight back, get strong." And he couldn't. It wasn't in him. And he tried, but he just couldn't. And it kept happening, and, you know, he was crying, and his dad says, "Men don't cry, tough it up, get stronger, go back and fight." And he just tried, but he couldn't. Until finally years had passed and he went to his mentors. And his mentors were his dad, his uncles, and his older brothers. And they were sitting in the front of the house in their chairs, as they usually did, drinking their beer. And he stood in front of them and he said, "I need help, and I want to join the gang with you." And they all laughed and they said, "You can't. You're not old enough." And he said, "I don't care. I need to join, and I need to be able to fight back, and I need to learn how to do it, and you need to teach me." And he convinced them to do it. And they jumped him, which means that they beat him up, they shave his head, and then he showed up at school the next day. And he now had his guard. And nobody touched him. And of course, he then had to do what he had to do and join the gang. And that was starting to hurt other people. He was 12 years old. He was the youngest ever to be brought into the gang. But nobody touched him anymore, and that's what he knew, and that's what he did. And he said, Jani, that's when I shut my heart down, and it hasn't come out since, because it can't. So towards the end, we sat down, and I said to him, what would you want to do in your life if you had a choice? What do you want to do? And he says, I want to be a fireman. And I said, really, why? And he said, because I really want to help people. And I said, isn't that ironic and so amazing that your soul is born here to help, and yet your circumstances and what you did and what you needed to do to survive was to hurt? And he looked at me, and the tears started to come down his face. And he said, yeah, it's really sad. And I said, but you have a choice. And he said, I see now that I do. And I saw that transformation happen. He now had a choice. He never even knew he had a choice before. And I looked at him and I said, so I guess gangsters cry. And he said, I'm not a gangster anymore. Well, it's not so easy to get out of the gang, but he did what he could. He wasn't necessarily going to be able to be a fireman because he'd been in and out of jail and did things that I can't tell you about, but it was pretty bad. But he is focusing on helping others. I'm going to tell you another story too, because I think it's profound, and I think even though these maybe you might not be able to relate as much as about his circumstances, I know we can all relate and feel it in our hearts, because I'm sure that some of you men in here have had that experience of somebody saying to you, men don't cry. And that's a belief system that you've carried around with you, or different things that you've been told, that belief systems that hold us stuck. Another time we were doing a process and we were talking about moms and dads, and this girl was standing there again, tight and held in her body, and she wouldn't let out any feelings at all about mom. And I remember standing in front of her and asking her to just speak it out to words about something with her mom, and I knew that there was pain in there, but I didn't know what truly it was about. And all of a sudden we're standing there, and she's just so tight that her nose begins to bleed because the internal combustion was just ready to go, and she started to shake. And one of my doctors I had there with us took her and took care of her, and she came back in later, and by that time we were all sitting on the floor talking and sharing about our experiences. We always did. And everybody was concerned about her, and we handed her the microphone. She wanted to speak, and she told us her story, which was when she was a little girl, her mom left. And she described how the mom walked out the door, and she grabbed her mom by the leg and begged her not to go, and cried and said, please don't go, Mama. And the mom left, and she remembers watching her walk down the street. And she went back into the house, and the family gathered together. And at that moment, her dad said to her, you are now the mother, and you are now to take care of your little brothers, who were 4 and 1.5, and this little girl was 6 years old. She lost her childhood at that point, and she began her life of this, gripping tight to a belief that she needed to step up and be responsible. And she was so mad at her mother. But when she had that microphone and she began to share with us, you could just see it wash away, because at that moment she realized once again she had a choice to carry the anger of her mother the rest of her life, or to know that she was okay and that she was going to be okay. And she, in front of all of us out loud, said, I forgive you, Mama. And that was the most miraculous healing I've ever seen and witnessed. And she said out loud, it's not my fault. She didn't leave me. She just had to go. It's not about me. And we all transformed. It was amazing to see. So it happens like this, and it can happen like that. But it takes that purging and that letting go of being right. She let go of being right about a lot of things. And I just spoke with her last week. This was 5 years ago. She's a senior in high school, and she's going to college to study criminal justice. And she's doing really, really well. And she said she'll never forget that moment the rest of her life. I'm sure you've all had that moment where you've had that epiphany and that moment, and you'll remember it forever. It's that transformational moment that sticks with you, that stays in your heart. And I've witnessed it because it shows up on the face. When I do workshops and people come in, I see it on their face. Don't let it, or don't think that people don't know. When you ask somebody how they're doing, they go, fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. The mouth kind of goes this way. It doesn't turn up on the corners. The mouth just kind of goes like, I'm fine, good, it's good, life's good. Yeah, everything good? Fine. It shows up. Because after 2 days with working with kids, with working with adults, especially working with women, I give them a mirror and I say, 2 days, look at yourself now. Everybody's going to think you had a facelift. And all you did was purge out the gunk. All you did was give yourself permission to let go and let that old belief die. And oh my goodness, it shows up all over your face. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. Transformation is possible. Physical transformation is happening to us every single day. I'm sure you all are experiencing it. I am. Forget about turning 50. This girl, she just ain't what she used to be. That physical transformation that happens is scary. You think, what the heck? Why do I have to eat like a bird? I used to be able to eat anything I wanted. Now I have to pay attention to everything. We're constantly transforming. Our physical body is changing every single day. We gain weight, we lose weight. We get sick, we get healthy. We have pain. You all know Louise Hay, right? You can heal your life. And in there you see the index of all those things that are just a look at, a just notice if this pain relates to anything in your life. I believe our bodies are beacons and messengers that say, pay attention, pay attention. Something's going a little awry and you need to stop and pay attention. I know the pain is real. I know the illness is real. It's real. But when you can take a deep look at why it's there and ask yourself once again, what is going on with me? And I think, too, in the metaphysical, we believe that if we're not able to heal ourselves in the physical, that something may be wrong with us. But I also want you to believe and know that maybe your healing won't be in the physical. Maybe it comes up and shows up in the physical, but your healing will happen in the emotional. Maybe the healing that you need, or what is being sought by your spirit, is the emotional, but it just is showing up in the physical. I remember years ago there was a minister that got cancer, and instead of coming to be more fully enveloped with all the spirit of the center, she shut down and she went within because she felt so ashamed that she wasn't able to heal herself. So be very aware of how you pay attention to those kinds of things. The healing may not be in the physical. We are all going to make our transition. But it's good to notice what is the healing that needs to occur when I'm feeling something maybe in the physical. But the biggest transformation, I believe, and I feel that we're all here, is our soul's transformation. I feel it here today. I feel the Spirit is here. And I know that soul, our soul spirit, came here to transform, asking you to do your work on the deepest level, to do your work so that your soul can transform and grow to its magnificence. I think you don't even know how magnificent you are. I believe you forgot long, long ago when your little 5-year-old self began the journey of the belief systems that you started to create. And you began to shut down to protect yourself. You forgot who you were. You forgot how great and magnificent and capable and worthy that you are. So let that be maybe a transformation that you take with you today of how worthy you are and how capable you are and how smart you are and brilliant you are. And remember that and take that with you, because your soul is here to transform, and it relies on you to do that work, to step up to the next and the next and the next, because like I said, it is not a destination. Transformation is a journey. So I'll tell you a story. There was this woman who was in her garden, and she saw the cocoon, and she saw the butterfly trying to poke its little way out of the cocoon. And she looked over at it, and she, her nurturing heart, mother heart, went over and looked and watched the little butterfly trying to emerge from the cocoon, and she began to kind of peel away a little to help it. And she's looking at it, and she's like, oh, it's so beautiful. She said, I'll just peel away a little bit at it, and I'll give it some help. And she blessed it, and she went into her house, and the next day she was going to come out to see the butterfly, and she walked over, and the cocoon looked exactly as she had left it, maybe a little more open, and inside the butterfly had died. In her attempt to help the butterfly, she killed the butterfly, because the butterfly needed to struggle to build its wings fully to emerge to its fullest self. And in doing what she did to help, she stopped the struggle. It's within the struggle that we emerge to be the butterfly. So just notice, if you are helping others to emerge, you cannot do it for them. You're not the lifesaver of the world. You can stand in the fire with them and be strong with them, but allowing all the struggles, including your own, it's in the struggle that we emerge the butterfly. Thank you. And so it is. So let's take a minute and close our eyes. Take a deep breath. And I know deep in my heart that Spirit is present here today with us. So pleased, so blessed, so happy. And I know right here, right now, that all of us are emerging the beautiful butterfly that we are, in the knowing that we are enough, in the knowing that we have all that it takes, and that we have the answer. We are wise beyond what we believe or know. And I know that I am enough. And I know that I have what it takes. And I know that I now am willing to let go of the past and let that die off, knowing that I am safe. And as I grieve the loss of that old belief, new beliefs can emerge so that I emerge the butterfly. And I know that I am divinely guided to do this, and I am safe in doing so, because I am not alone. I have Spirit, I have guides, I have support, and I trust and I know that within that support I am safe to be, and safe to be free, and safe to be me. And I know this to be true. And as I take on this day, I see it with new eyes, and I see it with new light. And I step out of my emotions of it, and I observe myself And I ask myself, what is it that I get to learn today? And I know that I am supported, that God is here with me by my side. I am not alone, ever. And with this and the universe together, we say, and so it is.